I'm Ryan from ExtremeTerrain.com, and this is Throttle Out. This is a monthly episode where we walk you through some builds that we've done, Jeep news, new products that we've added to the website, or other cool Jeep stuff that we want to share with you. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel to check out next month's episode. In this month's episode, we're going to walk you through a build that we did that's specifically designed for an on-road Jeep, but then take that Jeep off-road just to see what happens. It should get interesting. We're also going to walk you through a new product that we added to the site, but let's check out the build. Today we have a 2016 four-door Sahara that came to us completely stock, and we're going to be doing a little bit more of a mild build than you might be used to. This Jeep is going to spend most, if not all of its life on the road, so all of the mods that we picked were to ensure we don't get rid of that factory ride comfort and those factory handling characteristics. Now, even though this build is designed for an on-road Jeep, we're still going to take this thing off-road when we're finished just to see how it performs. Keeping on-road comfort in mind, we decided to go with a tire that wasn't quite as knobby and aggressive as we've gone with in the past. We skipped the MTZs and the KO2s and decided to go with a set of NITTO Terra Grapplers. And these are 305 7017s wrapped around a Mammoth Type 88 black wheel that is 17 by 9 inches. These tires are going to be, as I said, a little bit less aggressive, not as knobby. That's going to help keep down on some road noise. It's also going to allow the tire to wear a lot better. With those big knobby mud tires, when you're driving them on the street, you're not going to get a ton of miles out of them. These will definitely last us a lot longer. In order to fit these larger tires, which measure out to be right about a 33, we went with a 2.5-inch Teraflex lift with shocks. Now, we decided to go with this lift because, again, it is going to give us some on-road comfort, and it doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles that a more off-road suspension would have. This is going to allow us to fit this tire but still drive on the road comfortably. This kit is going to include all 4 springs, your shocks, of course it's going to have track bar brackets, brake line relocation brackets, and all of the hardware that you need to get it installed. Now, because we are at 2.5 inches and not at 3.5, we're not going to have to worry about driveline vibrations if we don't correct pinion and caster angle in the front or in the rear, and a lot of those other issues that you get into with a bigger lift. So again, smaller lift, it allowed us to go with something simpler, save a little bit of money, and still maintain those on-road characteristics. One of my favorite parts that we installed on this build is the Bestop Sunrider for hardtop in Twill. A lot of you will know the Bestop name if you've done any shopping for aftermarket tops, and in fact, Bestop makes the factory tops for Jeep, so you know you're getting a high quality piece. Anything from Bestop that is made with the Twill material is their highest quality material, very similar to the new premium material that you can get right out of the factory. Now, this Sunrider top replaces your Freedom panels in your hardtop, giving you a bit of a hybrid hardtop soft top. This way you can very easily unclip a couple of clips and fold back that front area that's over the front 2 passengers as you would be able to the Sunrider feature on your soft top. However, you still get to maintain the rest of your hardtop, which gives you that security and a little bit less noise than you can get out of your soft top. Again, it is a really nice hybrid. And because this is that Twill material, it's going to be really high quality. It looks good, cuts down on noise, and it's going to last a really long time. Another piece that we installed in this build are the Barricade HD rocker steps. Now, this is a part that is definitely geared toward the on-road and not as much the off-road. There are some steps on the market that will offer a good bit of protection when you do take your Jeep off-road, and also a step. These are going to provide a very useful step and also help to cover the pinch seam, which is a nice aesthetic mod. However, these are not going to provide any protection off-road. You're going to get some protection from door dings in the parking lot, but if you do take the Jeep off-road and do any hardcore off-roading, there is a good chance that you're going to bend a step, and if anything, it's going to cause more damage instead of protecting your Jeep. These are definitely an on-road mod. However, as a step, they work really, really well. We only have a 2.5-inch lift on this Jeep and 33s, but it can still be a little bit more difficult to get in and out of any lifted JK. So these steps are going to make it a lot easier, and in my opinion, they look pretty good. Another part that we installed on this build is the RedRock 4x4 shorty antenna. Now, we did this mostly for the visual mod. We didn't like the look of that full-size factory antenna. However, those of you who are building a Jeep more for the off-road might also want to consider a shorty antenna because it will keep the antenna from getting hung up on branches when you're out on the trail. For the bumper on this Jeep, we decided to install the Barricade Trail Force HD front bumper, which, even though this is more of an on-road build, does offer some features if we decide to take this build in a different direction down the line. This bumper is going to have a winch mount, it has some D-rings, it also has this bar up top that will accept a couple of auxiliary lights, but for our purposes, we were really after the protection that a metal bumper offers and the fact that this still will accept your factory fog lights. Now, the factory front bumper on your JK can very easily be crushed in because it is just plastic, so this steel bumper is going to hold up a lot better in the event that you do get into a little bit of a fender bender when you're in the parking lot or on the street. This is a mid-width bumper, so it will give us some good coverage from end to end, not quite as much as a full width, a little bit more of an aggressive look. However, we're still going to be able to protect those factory Terra fenders. And as I mentioned, one thing that I really like about this bumper is that it will accept those factory front fog lights. You already have the fog lights, they're wired, you have the switch for them, so why not purchase a bumper that will accept them? You can just bolt them right in, and that's what this bumper will allow for. Back here we installed the Barricade Trail Force HD rear bumper, which does a really nice job of matching the front, and like the front, we installed this because we really like the look of it, and it's going to offer more protection to the Jeep than that factory plastic bumper does. This bumper comes all the way to the edge of the tub, so again, any sort of door dings or minor fender benders that you might get into, you're gonna have a lot more protection. And also like that front bumper, if we do decide to go a different direction with this build and get into a little bit more off-roading, this bumper does have the built-in D-ring mounts, so those are going to be functional if we do take this thing off-road, and in the meantime, they give us that off-road look. Now, this bumper is available with a tire carrier. We decided to go with a different direction for the tire carrier. As with any Jeep, this build isn't finished, and that's definitely something that we're going to be adding to get this larger tire off that factory spare tire mount. The last part we used in this build is the Superchips Flashcal F5. And I say use because it's not really an installation. A calibrator like this is designed to get your factory parameters back in spec after installing larger tires on your Jeep or re-gearing. Now, one of the reasons we went with the 33-inch tire on this Wrangler is so that we didn't have to re-gear, but because this is an automatic transmission, letting the ECU know that it does have a slightly larger tire is going to adjust the transmission shift points and give you a much more comfortable ride. With this calibrator, you can also adjust a few comfort features like your radio and headlight delays, if the horn chirps when you lock and unlock, and if we had lockers and electronic sway bar disconnects, you would be able to manage those with this as well. With our wheels and tires, we did install a new set of TPMS sensors, but if we didn't, you could also turn off your factory system with this calibrator. Now, this is the F5, which is an upgrade from the old Superchips Flashcal. This has a much more user-friendly color screen, and I really like using these types of calibrators that have a screen on them versus the types of calibrators that just use dip switches. I find these a lot easier to use. So now that we got all the parts installed and the ECU calibrated, it's time to take this thing on the road and see how it handles, and then off-road just to see how it performs. But first, let's check out this month's product break, where we introduce a new product that we've recently added to the site. In this month's product break, I'm bringing you the Krawler Ultimate Steering Upgrade Kit. This is going to be for those of you with a 2007 and up JK that has 3.5 inches of lift or more. And what this kit is going to accomplish is flipping the axle side of the drag link mount on the steering knuckle from below to above the steering knuckle, which is going to help to flatten out that drag link angle a little bit, which is a nice thing when you have 3.5 inches of lift or more. Now, if you're familiar with suspension geometry, you'll know that you can't just change the angle of your drag link without also changing the angle of your track bar. Those need to remain in parallel or you're going to end up with bump steer. So this kit also includes a very beefy adjustable track bar and your track bar bracket to make sure everything stays in parallel. So not only are you getting a much stronger link out of this system, you're also getting a much stronger joint. This has spherical joints that are greasable. This is going to hold up a lot better than that factory steering system. So whether you're doing some really heavy wheeling and or you have some really big tires, you can feel confident that this is going to stand up to the abuse. Remember, you can check out this and other steering components as well as anything else for your Wrangler on the website at ExtremeTerrain.com. Well, it's finally time to take this Jeep out on the road where I fully expected to ride, handle, and drive very comfortably. As we've said all along, this is very much an on-road geared build, so I don't expect to have any surprises on the road. But we're also going to take this Jeep off-road, even though it wasn't built for it, and that is going to be fun. We're gonna see how this thing handles the trails. I know Jeeps right off the assembly line are very, very capable vehicles, and we have added some mods that, even though this isn't geared toward the off-road, will also help us off-road. So it'll be really interesting to see what this can and can't handle. We're not going to get into some really hardcore stuff, but it will be interesting to put this through its paces off-road and see what it can do. Right off the bat, the initial impression is I'm glad we went with 33-inch tires, and I'm glad we used that Superchips Flashcal. This thing, right off the line, still has the same acceleration, the same pickup, the same feel as a factory Jeep would. And if we had gone with a 35-inch tire, we would have had a much more sluggish feel off the line. Those big heavy wheel and tire packages do definitely have an impact on the acceleration of the Jeep if you're not going to re-gear, which we knew we didn't want to do with this build, so 33s were an excellent choice for us. And as we said back in the studio, we used that Superchips Flashcal, the new version, the F5 with the color screen, in order to let our automatic transmission know that we had a larger tire and to ensure that we were going to have all of the shift points back to factory. Again, that's just giving us our drivability on road. A couple of the parts that we installed on this Jeep, you're not going to notice driving around. Obviously, the front and the rear bumper, you're not going to notice them driving on the road. They are going to change the aesthetics of the Jeep, so other people driving down the road will notice them. However, until you do decide to switch from on-road to more of an off-road Jeep and start to use the recovery points, you're not going to get a ton of function out of these bumpers, although they do look pretty good. Something that is definitely an on-road mod that we did on this Jeep are the Barricade HD steps. Now, these steps are pretty wide. They definitely are not going to offer any protection off-road. However, they're a very useful step, and they do a nice job of covering up that unfinished pinch seam, which gives us a really nice finished look. So that's one of the areas that's definitely on-road, while actually being a bit of a drawback off-road. We're going to have less clearance, and you're going to want to make sure you don't bend up your new step when we do go off-road. But we'll explore that a little further when we actually hit the trails. I don't know if you guys can see in the background here, but there's salt on the road. I have my heavy Carhartt on. It's about 26, it might be up to around 30 degrees right now. So very cold, and definitely not the time to flip back this Bestop Sunrider. However, it is a great feature to have, and honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of this build. I think it adds a ton of functionality to a hardtop and really does give you the best of both worlds. You really do have that hybrid hardtop, soft top when you have this top installed. It's something I'm definitely looking forward to taking advantage of when the weather warms up a bit. The other mod that you will notice on the road is the RedRock 4x4 stubby antenna. This is a much shorter antenna than the factory one. In my opinion, it looks a lot better, but you're also not going to have quite as much radio reception. We're really close to Philadelphia, so we still have some pretty good reception. If you're somebody who's not that close to a city, needs the best reception possible, a shorty antenna, probably not the best mod for you. For us, in the area that we live in, and for the look that we were going for, this is going to be a great mod. On the flip side of that, if you do have really good radio reception, or you don't use your radio much, and you want a short antenna that isn't going to get hung up on brush and branches when you're off-road, the shorty antenna is going to be a really nice addition. And last but certainly not least is the Teraflex 2.5-inch lift kit. I waited till the end to talk about that because I really wanted to get a good feel of how it is on the road. And this drives and handles very much like a factory Jeep. Again, 2.5 inches of lift isn't huge. We don't have to worry about caster correction, pinion angle correction. We don't have a lot of body roll. There's not a lot of sway. And it is very comfortable even with the Teraflex shocks that come in this lift kit. Now, we could probably get a little bit more ride comfort if we went up to a Bilstein or a Fox shock, especially if we went with something adjustable. However, right out of the box, for something that's a very complete kit that isn't crazy expensive and is also a fairly easy install as far as lift kits go, I think we made a really nice choice. This is a very well-behaved on-road driving Jeep for a Jeep with a lift kit. So that's how all these parts work and function on-road, and they work as expected. They work really well. This Jeep was built for the on-road, and it handles the road really nicely, very much like a factory Jeep with some upgraded aesthetics. So now it's time to take this on-road Jeep off-road and see how it works. This could be interesting. So like I said, we're not going to be doing anything really hardcore today, but we do want to take this Jeep off-road and just see how it handles the trails. And right off the bat, again, we haven't done anything that a factory Jeep couldn't handle, so obviously our lifted Jeep with a little bit of a Navier tire on it is going to be handling that without a problem. We're just pretty much cruising down a fire trail now, but I do plan on getting into a situation where we'll have a little bit of a tighter clearance going over an obstacle, getting into a little bit of mud to see how these tires, which are more of an all-terrain tire than a mud-terrain tire, handle that, and put it in a couple other situations where we can really show the difference between an on-road build and an off-road build. So far, the Teraflex suspension, it's giving us 2.5 more inches of clearance than the factory suspension does, and the shocks that rode very comfortably on the road handle the bumps off-road pretty well. Also, we're off-road here. We're not doing high-speed desert racing, so we're cruising along at anywhere between 5 and 10 miles an hour, usually closer to 5, and it's a pretty comfortable ride. We haven't aired down the tires at all. This is the on-road tire pressure. So of course we'd get a little bit more of a comfortable ride and a little bigger footprint and some more traction with an aired down tire. But again, on-road build, taking it off-road, seeing how it handles, so we're just gonna leave the tires aired up. Now I am being a little bit cautious, even though we're on these very easy fire trail type of trails, roads, really just a dirt road. Because I've never taken a Jeep off-road that didn't have good, solid rocker protection. And I know that these steps are not going to offer any of that. So I'm looking out for any fallen trees that if I go over them on one side, it might kick up on the other. I'm looking for any sharp drop-offs. Any of that stuff that would normally possibly cause rocker damage that I'm normally protected against, that in this scenario here, I don't have protection against. It's definitely at the top of mind. We've also avoided the mud up till this point. However, like I said, we are gonna hit a little bit of it and see how these tires hold up. So the biggest things about this build that make it more of an on-road build are the lift kit, only being 2.5 inches and not having some of the other accessories like sway bar disconnects that a more off-road gear lift would have. The tires, which are Terra grapplers and not mud grapplers, and the steps, which aren't protection but are just a step. So here we're cruising along the trail, there's a mud puddle. I'm gonna hit it and we'll just see what happens. See if these tires grab and pull us through, or if we end up getting stuck. So here we go, there's a little bit of ice on top of the water here. We're gonna hit it and see if we make it through. And we pulled through, no problem. Got a little bit of mud thrown up on the Jeep. That was fun. I'm sure that the mud grapplers would have pulled us through it a little bit easier, a little bit quicker, not quite as much wheel spin. And once these tires do get loaded up with mud, they're not going to self-clean as well as a mud tire, but they still pull us through. So there you have it. Part of that, probably my fault. I lost a little bit of momentum going through the middle. Luckily, we have another Jeep here. We're gonna hook up a winch line and move on to the next obstacle. So this right here is why you run a mud tire when you plan on hitting the mud and not an all-terrain tire. A mud tire has those big knobby treads on there, and what they do is they self-clean. So when you get into a mud hole like this and they start to spin, they'll actually throw the mud out, giving you those teeth back again. With an all-terrain tire like this, they get mudded up, the mud sticks in the tread, and you end up with what equates to pretty much a slick, which isn't gonna get you anywhere, and we're gonna have to pull some winch line. Now, while we're speaking of hooking up the winch line, these bumpers, which were mostly an aesthetic mod while we were staying on the road, are now gonna come in really handy. Now, you have your factory tow hooks that you can always hook a winch line to, but I prefer a D-ring attachment. It's a really solid connection for a winch line or a snatch strap, and it's going to ensure that we're gonna get out of here without any lines slipping off of the hooks. Well, I can't say I'm surprised that it ended this way with the Jeep on the end of the winch hook. I knew going into that mud puddle that there was a chance you were gonna get stuck with these all-terrain tires. It actually made it through the first couple of passes, but lost a little bit of momentum and got stuck that third time. Glad we had our other Jeep here with a winch, gotten out, moving on to the next obstacle. Now, we don't have a lot of rocks out on this trail that we're on today, but I did want to show you a scenario where rocker protection will definitely outweigh having a very useful step. What we've installed here is a great step, but it doesn't offer a lot of protection. And this is just a small stump, but if it were a boulder, this step would definitely have some trouble standing up to the weight of the Jeep being put down on it. So again, if you plan on going off-road, you'll definitely want to look at some rocker protection, a rock slider or rocker guard that has a built-in step versus a purpose-built step like this one that doesn't offer a lot of protection. Another area that this shows there could be a little bit of improvement if you plan on building an off-road Jeep is a little bit more lift. Now, 2.5 inches is a good bit of lift and you can do some really hardcore wheeling with it. But if you are going to go in those scenarios where you need or want to have a ton of clearance between the ground and your frame, having a taller lift will definitely help. If we had a 3.5 inch lift instead of a 2.5, we'd be able to clear this obstacle without an issue. Thanks for watching this episode of Throttle Out, where we took a Jeep that wasn't necessarily built for the trails out just to see what happens and gave you some more information about a new part that we've recently added to the site. Make sure you check out the next episode and remember, when in doubt, throttle out.